Head teacher Stephen Drew from Channel 4's Educating Essex, along with journalist and director of the New Schools Network, Toby Young. Gentlemen, where do we sit with this? Firstly, let's ask you, Stephen. Good in the holidays or not? Because I don't think you can win either way, really.
Children have enough to do during school time. They deserve their holidays. Being young, you're only young once, you're only young for a period of time. I don't really buy the argument that you desperately need to make children do work during the holidays. I think there's no reason why teenagers shouldn't be allowed to stay in bed sometimes, shouldn't be allowed actually to waste time. Maybe young people should just sometimes be allowed to be young. We have enough time as adults, we have enough time working. I think we can really cut some young people some slack during the holidays and let them have holidays.
So what happens when they come back to school in September? Do you find their brains have turned to mush and they've forgotten how to read and write? And
no, I don't think that's the case at all. It's interesting to find that in Italy they get 13 weeks holiday a year. France do 9 weeks holiday a year. We have North American countries with 2 months or more holidays a year.
But it does
during
seem,
the summer.
It does seem, as a parent, Toby, that kids, and this will go down like a lead balloon, but are always on holiday. Mine go back to school and within a heartbeat it's half term. I sort of bounce between the two. I want them to be aware and switched on, but I also want them, and I think Stephen's right about one thing, to be kids.
Well, you're not wrong about English school children in the UK having longer holidays. On average, children in the UK spend 190 days a year in school. In Southeast Asia, 208, and that's one of the reasons Southeast Asian kids are ahead of our kids. One of the most robust findings in the research literature is something called summer learning loss, which is that children forget a lot of what they've learnt during the academic year over the summer holidays. And one argument for homework is that if they do some homework over the summer holidays, when they go back to school at the beginning of next term, they're less likely to have forgotten what they learnt the previous term. And that's particularly true of disadvantaged children. Children in homes where there aren't many stimulating activities, where they're more likely to spend time on screens watching TV, they suffer more. So a policy of no homework over the summer penalises disadvantaged kids.
what's wrong with being bored? What's wrong with allowing a child to fester a bit and get bored? Isn't that where we hear so often from musicians, from artists, from creative people, that it was during long, boring days they developed a sense of adventure and finding things to do rather than being handed tasks to complete?
Well, I was going to say, Kate, what's more boring than doing homework? But I think generally speaking, it's actually really helpful for children to do stimulating things. It's not typical, I don't think, in households where children don't do homework, for children just to go outside and imagine and play imaginative games. Instead, they're on their iPads, they're on their iPhones, they're watching TV, they're watching YouTube. My kids sometimes, when they're not doing their homework, it's not that they do interesting stuff with me in the garden. They watch YouTube videos of other kids playing video games. I mean, it couldn't be less stimulating.
That is so true. I sort of, as a parent, you don't want them to forget everything, and I take what you say, maybe a few little tasks, but, I mean, there is a point, is there not, that after 10 weeks, you're going to spend a little bit of time, the kids have to catch up.
Well, it's interesting Toby refers to the 208 days on average for Southeast Asia, and I would assume, as Toby and other people in his position often do, push the idea that they are providing some kind of superior education. It's very interesting that I visited China. I've had Chinese head teachers come into my school. Every single teacher, head teacher, educationist from Southeast Asia who has sat in my office or toured around my school over the last 10 years has said, do you know what's wrong with our education system? We push children too hard. We are creating a mental health crisis for our children. Do you know what we want for our schools? We want our schools to be more like yours. We want our schools to be more focused on the arts, to have more pastoral care. And every single time I meet a head teacher or a teacher from that part of the world, all they ever talk about is that we are overstressing and over-pushing our children. So, yes, they might have more time in education. But it seems to me that summer holidays are longer in other countries. I don't think those countries are falling apart. I don't think there's some lack of Nobel Prize winners coming from those countries because they happen to have 10 weeks of holiday. We have a situation at the moment where we pile more and more and more pressure on children. We create a situation where children feel that if they don't meet the absolute standards that we require of them, there is no escape for them.
Toby?
Well, it may be that children don't have as much fun in Southeast Asia as they do in England, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes stress, feeling obliged to do something, to achieve, to get good marks, can be good. There's good stress and there's bad stress.
We do it all the time. OK, tell me what the good stress is.
There is a clear research finding that the more homework children do, the better they do in school. And across the developed world, those countries in which children do best get the most homework.
Isn't it about, for example, and you made a point about pads and stuff. Isn't it a case that a child should do some homework, should get some exercise, should go outside like we all did like we were kids, yes, watch some telly, yes, have the iPad, balance.
Yeah.
Too many kids never go outside because they're on iPads. Some kids don't do any homework. I actually think there has to be a middle ground
Yeah,
on
I
this.
think the important thing is not necessarily to get your kids to do an hour or 2 hours of homework every day, but to make sure they're doing something stimulating. I've just written a book called What Every Parent Needs to Know, which has lots of top
I
tips
bet it
for
does.
fun things
That's
parents
homework
can do
for parents
with their
you've
kids.
got right there. What were you going to say?
Easy
There is a
reading.
middle ground. Your last final point.
There actually is a middle ground in that there is a primary school, one of the feeder primary schools for my school. They don't set homework over summer holidays. What they do is they give parents top tips of things to do. So they encourage them to take their children to roll down a hill. They encourage them to get their children to climb a tree. They encourage children to go to the seaside.
Parents should know that themselves, shouldn't
Well,
Not always.
I think, as we know, parenting isn't the simplest thing in the whole world. And
it's
if people
not.
can give us a few tips, it helps.